You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for music lovers. I'm your host, Kelly. Music is a thread that weaves a course throughout our lives. Join me on a journey to unravel that thread and bring you the stories behind what inspires musicians to create. Side note, Tapestry is an uncensored podcast. Don't say I didn't warn you. Hey everybody, it's been quite a while since I've put out an episode, but being that hiatus is what it is, I welcome you back to episode 45 now of Tapestry. And today's guest was the wonderful Lisa Mann, who records under the name White Crone, which is kind of her offshoot heavy metal project. But she has backgrounds as a blues bassist and talked to me a lot about today the transition towards writing an old school heavy metal album coming from that background, some misconceptions about metal and the Grammys, and the surprising way in which she got the former drummer of Black Sabbath to contribute to her album, The Poisoner. You're listening to the last track off of that album from this year called 18 Rabbit.
Okay, well, my name is Lisa Mann, and I am a bass player and a vocalist and a band leader, and I work primarily in contemporary blues. So, I've produced several albums on my own over the years in the blues genre and blues rock. But I grew up a metalhead. I grew up in mosh pits, really. When I was 12 and 13 years old, I was, in there with the big bruisers, and they'd throw me around and pick me up, and I'd, stage dive and crowd surf. And so I love metal still to this day. So I decided, I lost my mind one day, decided I was going to make a full-length metal album. And I chose the alter ego name White Crone because I'm old and I'm pale. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, fair enough. I did find that doing my research that, you came from a blues background, which I find really fascinating. And of course, there is the intrinsic link between blues and metal, but I do find that stylistic diversion pretty interesting. And especially because you said, you were really inspired by the bands of the 80s, like Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath and all this stuff. Did you have a parent that got you into that, or did you kind of come to find metal on your own?
Well, my parents they weren't hippies, but they were hippie adjacent.
Okay.
So they had Led Zeppelin albums and Deep Purple. That Deep Purple album, that Machine Head album, I learned, the first song I ever learned was Space Truckin' on the bass.
Great song.
And hell yeah, and Black Sabbath and Steppenwolf and Vanilla Fudge, stuff like that. And Cream, fucking Jack Bruce. And so I learned how to play the bass to that stuff first. And then I started getting into Iron Maiden and playing that kind of stuff. And so I became a working bass player when I was about 19, 20 years old. And I was doing top 40 and stuff and rock and roll. But finally, when I ended up back in Portland, because I kind of grew up my teenage years in Portland, but I lived in Seattle for a while and played in rock bands. I came back to Portland, and it's a big blues scene. And if you want to work as a bass player and get paid, you got to play some blues. So having learned all that blues-based stuff like Led Zeppelin and Cream, it was like, oh, okay. I get it. They stole this shit from Willie Dixon. Okay.
Were you working in Seattle in the 90s during the grunge explosion? Did you catch that ride?
I was, but I was on a parallel track. I was actually in the top 40 rock scene. So we were actually getting paid to play music. And a lot of those bands, they were just, there was a lot of pay to play, and it was, you sell tickets and stuff like that. So, yeah, that was going on. It was kind of interesting, meeting people, knowing people. And then, of course, when Kurt Cobain died, it was like, holy shit.
Right.
So, we bumped elbows with some people, but for the most part, we just played cover songs and nightclubs. And
so just so you might
people.
have like a really cool story about like meeting Lane Staley or something, you just never know. But okay, so that kind of gives me that at least gives me a course to go down. So, and you said you're back in Portland now, right?
Yeah, have been for some time.
Okay. I know that there's a fantastic metal scene in Portland, but we can kind of touch on that later. But okay, so you were a working bassist, you're doing mostly top 40 stuff, and then at what point did there kind of like become this paradigm shift for you that sort of edged you out of that world and maybe like, forced you to try to want to do your own more creative stuff?
Yeah, I never considered myself a songwriter. And it was in the mid 2000s I started writing my own tunes. And, my first two albums, they're out of press because I had like a country song and an arena rock song and just, it was all over the map. So I ended up just like picking the most bluesy songs and making a blues compilation. I worked with a wonderful piano player named Janice Scroggins, and she put a few tracks on the album. And so I went from there, and I was just like, well, I'm going to try this. And so my stepfather was kind enough to help me fund first couple of albums. And then I was able to, as things got rolling, I was able to self-fund. Just put on a credit card and then pay it down. Put on a credit card, pay it down. You know what I'm saying? And I've been learning how to do the business as I went along. So when I did decide to do White Crone, The Poisoner, I had already had, several, like 6 full-length albums under my belt. So I kind of knew how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, now granted, I just want to put this out here because you found me. I don't know how you found me, but you were asking me to include a track of yours on one of my many Spotify playlists. And then when I looked into your stuff, I'm like, wow, okay, you really run the gamut on social media and you're very active. So it seems like you kind of have the game down pat, which is good. But I imagine things are a lot more, or a lot different now than they were trying to self-promote as a blues musician back when you were younger, right?
It's a totally different scene, of course, and right now everything's online. See, blues people, they like CDs. They like physical product and being at shows. Although there are, I've had some success with Spotify. There's actually a song I don't even play anymore in my set, and it's on all these big, editorial playlists and stuff. And so I'm actually making some money off of Spotify. Nice. But actually, it's there's a guy named Keith, I think it's Chachkis. They call him Keefy. And there's a guy named Matt Bacon, and they do Dumb and Dumbest podcast.
Okay.
And they've been got a PR firm, and they have this Spotify challenge. So they teach you how to approach people who have Spotify lists and ask them if they'll add you to the list. So it's because of those guys, because of Matt Bacon, that I reached out to you. And then I saw your Bandcamp profile, because you just had your name on there, and I just Googled you.
Oh, wow. You. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. That's so interesting.
Then I was like, this chick is badass. And then your video.
Wow. That is so wild. Like, that's like truly like such a weird thing to hear out loud, because we always like wonder, I always kind of wonder about the online breadcrumbs I leave. Like, sure, I associate my name with the podcast, like anyone could Google my name and have stuff come up, but that is not the chain of events I was expecting. I kind of forget about my Bandcamp profile, to be honest, but I'm glad you found me, and I guess thanks to the what did you say was Dumb and Dumber podcast?
Dumb and Dumbest.
Dumb and Dumbest.
These guys that Matt Bacon and Keefy, and these guys, they teach. They're wonderful, because they will they will show artists how to connect with Spotify playlists and how to market. It's marketing.
Right.
But I mean, the thing is I like people and I like hanging out with people. I like meeting new people.
Right.
I share interests with people. I like to talk about music. So for me, it's not like, oh, I'm going to try to market to these people. It's actually just really fun and really cool. So I saw your video about the day in the life of a metalhead.
Yeah.
And I was like, this chick is cool.
Well, thank you.
Get into bed with your battle vest.
Yeah, thank you. And likewise, I was like, oh man, that's what I do. Like, I run into people and I'm like, man, I wonder if they'd be on my podcast. They seem like they'd be fun to talk to. So far, so good. But I wonder if those guys could kind of help me do it in reverse, because I have a million playlists to offer and they're all highly targeted. And I'm always wondering, like, is there a way to monetize that? Or is there a way to use my expertise of multiple subgenres of music to, like, not just go, hey, get more followers on my playlist, but just truly to actually help people find underrated and, lesser known artists. That's kind of a passion of mine. So that aside, that's very cool to know. I'm really glad you shared that story. So I want to put the focus back on you, though. So, all right, so you had, 6 full-length albums before you finally decided to release your 2020 album, The Poisoner?
Well, and this is another long story.
We got all the time in the world.
I'm a member of the Recording Academy, and so as a metalhead, I don't just stick to the blues and roots categories. I look at the metal category. I look at the rock categories. Mm-hmm. And I had heard of the Swedish band Ghost. Uh-huh. I had heard of them, but I'd never heard them before until Cerise, won the Grammy. And I listened to like 100 songs.
Yeah.
And I heard that fucking song and I said, they better win the Grammy. They better win the Grammy for this song. And I had it on my phone. I even walked in the other room and to my husband, he's a musician too. I was like, check this. This is the weirdest shit. Listen to this. The intro sounds like Slayer, and then it sounds all retro, and it's super retro. And then this Mr. Friendly guy starts singing, sounds like Michael Stipe. I'm like, what the hell? This is crazy. And so I started getting into their catalog, and it was so weird. It was so bizarre and had ABBA influences and just all this crazy shit. It was just one day, it just occurred to me, you could just do whatever you want.
Lessons from Ghost.
What a concept. You could just write whatever kind of music you want. And it's like, and then all these melodies started coming out of my brain. I'd be taking a shower, I'd be taking a walk, I'd be driving, and I would hear these melodies, guitar parts, bass lines, vocal lines, and I would sing them into my phone. Mm-hmm. And I started collecting little parts. And eventually that's what became The Poison.
Okay. Well, you already pre-answered my question that was going to be, like, how do you write music? Because I always am fascinated by that, because I, like you had just said, I do not really see myself as a songwriter or more of a performer. But for some people, composition seems to just come really naturally. And for other people, they're like, no, like, I need that trigger. I need that thing that kind of puts the idea in my head. So was it challenging writing all these parts yourself, though? Because, I mean, you really are pretty much a one-woman band on this album. You do what? You did all of the 6 and 7 string guitars, 6 and 8 string basses, vocals, all that stuff, pretty much except drums, right?
Pretty much, except I had a friend of mine, Mehdi Farjabi. He's a great guitar player I've known since high school. And he was in a band called Glacier. And I asked him to do solos on 2 songs, and he just knocked it out of the park. He can do all the stuff I can't do, whammy bar and all that stuff, But really, to me, composition, I've always worked by myself. I've only co-written. I actually worked on a metal project about 10 years ago called Cry for Eden, and it's a symphonic metal project. Ooh. So I did some co-writing. I'm doing co-writing now with a band called Splintered Throne, and we're working on an album. I joined them as their singer. So I'm going to be doing some co-writing, but for the most part, I've always worked on my own. I've always preferred to work on my own because I'm a control freak. I don't know.
I can relate.
But I just hear, for me, the most important thing to me, and I can kind of, when I'm analyzing other people's music, I can tell, was this music heard? Did I hear this music in my mind and then execute it on the instrument?
Mm,
Or am I just like mimicking some pattern? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, it's important to me that a song makes, I'm a song person.
hmm.
So it's important to me not just to have a cool riff, this is cool, it's complicated, it's mathy, whatever, but does it make sense musically? Does it tell a story
Right.
melodically? So that's where I'm coming from as a songwriter.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I mean, I'll admit, like, okay, so when you found me, I think I said that in the Instagram DM. I'm like, wow, this is not anything like the style I normally listen to, because I did, as much as I am a metalhead now, I did not grow up one. I didn't have parents that listened to, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, but it felt very genuine to me. And even though there's like the sounds that are kind of mimicking some of that new wave of British heavy metal sounds and like classic heavy metal, it feels derivative and not like a replica. There's a lot of character to it. So I wasn't sure if there were any kind of people in particular or events or themes that, in particular really inspired that
Huh.
album.
Well, well, there's one song in particular, the first song, The Dream of Tiamat.
Mm-hmm.
That song, the lyrics of that song are actually the story of a dream that I had
Hmm.
when I was a teenager. And that was a long fucking time ago. But I remember that dream so well. I woke up and I was in this dark cave, and I knew that it was like miles below the earth, and there's like magma below me and an ocean above me. I could tell it was deep within the earth, and I saw this serpent, like a serpent with a woman's face,
Okay.
and it had these big teeth, and I was like drawn toward it. It had these huge eyes like saucers, and their eyes were glowing, and I felt drawn toward it, and I put my head down, and she bit off my head.
Oh, geez.
And
Okay.
then all of a sudden I was looking out of her eyes.
Huh.
I became her, and I was looking out and waiting for the next victim to come along so that I would be released. And I remember that dream so many years later, and actually that's what this song is about.
I mean, if that is not a concept primed and ready for a metal album, I truly don't know what is. Honestly, that is fucking awesome. I need to go back and listen to the lyrics now, so I can kind of get that in my head. But,
Yeah.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
I really did enjoy listening to it, even though it's kind of not my style. But it felt very fun. It felt like you really were kind of paying homage to some of the things you may have like grown up listening to, but you kind of made it all your own. So that being said, let's talk about bands that you cited as influences. I want to know, you have Vinny Appice on one of the tracks, the original, well, one of the drummers from the Black Sabbath. Like, how the hell did you make that happen? Like, was it hard to convince him, or are you friends with him? Like, that's got to be a selling point. Like, yo, I got the original drummer from Black Sabbath on my album. You should listen to it.
I cold called him.
Really?
I
What?
cold
Oh my god.
And it wasn't even for this album. He played on a blues rock track that I cut with a slide guitar player named Ben Rice.
Okay.
So it's on my album Hard Times Bad Decisions. When I was writing that album, it's got more of a blues rock focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a song on there about prison reform. It's called Judge a Man Forever. And it's got this real prison. And it's got this real boom, crack, boom, crack. Who can do that except Vinny Appice? And so in my mind, I was thinking, I hear Vinny Appice. So I thought in my mind, well, I can ask my friend Dave Mellion, who plays drums on a lot of my records. Hey, man, can you pretend to sound like Vinny Appice? And then I just said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to ask Vinny Appice. So I looked him up. I found an email and I said, "Hey man, I'm cutting this song. It's a blues rock track. I don't know if you work for hire." And I sent him another track called "This Bitch," which is another blues rock song that I cut that has a similar feel. So I
Okay.
was, "Here's my song, This Bitch. If you like it, you think you would do it?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, no problem."
Wow.
And he
What?
sent me to his manager, told me how much it cost, and he sent me these incredible tracks, really great. He records at home in his home studio. So I've
Mm.
actually never like met him and
Wow.
worked with. We just chat online. We just chat.
That's the power of the internet though. Like that's so crazy. That
Yeah.
is so crazy. Okay, I could not wait to hear that story because I thought maybe there was some legendary like, oh, Vinny and I go way back, like some sort of thing. But
Yeah. And you know what? I don't care. I just cold called Alex Skolnick. I don't give a shit.
oh, from
I just
Testament?
cold called him. Yeah, I just cold called him.
What did
And he said,
wait, what did Alex play on the Poisoner as well? Or
no,
no, okay.
no, no. He said no. Because I wanted him for another song, another metal song. And he said, "Well, if you got a blues rock song, I'll do it." So
Hmm.
maybe I'll have him on my next blues album.
Wow. Okay. I mean, hey, it never hurts to build your network, right? Like that's just crazy. That's so
To me, it's
crazy.
about who do you hear in your head? Who's going to serve the song?
Well,
Who's
that
going to, to me, that's it.
right. And like that actually struck me when you said that because, even myself as a drummer, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't have the ear for the nuance, but a lot of times I'm hearing just what's supposed to be played, less so the person behind it. But I probably ought to pay a little bit more attention to kind of the who as opposed to just the what. Now, speaking of that, I did write something down that I wanted to bring up. I know the rest of the drums on your album were done by Larry London, and I went to his YouTube channel because I was like, oh, maybe he has a playthrough from some of the White Crone stuff. And I forget which video it was, but he said on one of his YouTube videos that you were very easy to work with and were fluent in drum speak and you had very clear ideas about the drum parts. And I find that
Mhm.
really impressive for a person who is primarily a bassist and maybe a guitarist. I do remember clearly you introducing yourself to me over Instagram DMs as the world's shittiest drummer. So I'm I'm really surprised that the self-proclaimed world's shittiest drummer gets complimented by the drummer who worked on your album. So how do you contend with like, yes, being a rhythm player, but how do you kind of communicate that to your session drummer and know what you want to lay down?
Well, I bought a set of E drums. I bought some Roland E drums,
Oh, that's what I
and
used
I
to
already
play.
knew
They're
how
great.
to basically play. They're great. They got the mesh heads. They got some bounce back. I took one lesson from Larry a few years ago, where he
Okay.
just helped me hold the sticks because I was holding them like a cave woman. I'm like bashing away, going, "Why do my arms hurt so bad?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, you gotta let the sticks
Fingers.
work. Use your fingers. Don't just grab onto these sticks like an ape, you know." so 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 I actually played everything at home. I got set up a home studio. I got a 7-string guitar. I wrote everything and recorded everything at home using a Samplitude. It's
Mm.
kind of like a Pro Tools. And so I pre-recorded everything, including the drums. And I would hear the doom doom da 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 boom boom da 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 boom boom da da da, and I can hear that stuff. I understand what's going on with drums. I
Right.
totally understand. I've always tuned in. I know what's going on. I just physically
Mm-hmm.
am clumsy and I can't execute it well. So if you heard the scratch tracks that I sent him, they're terrible. They're just terrible, but they get the ideas across, right? Because
Right.
I wrote all the drum parts on here. I came up with the parts and said, "I want you to play this here." But he improved on them. He way improved on them. And there's a few things that he said, "You know what? I think that's not the best thing for this, and let me change this." And I would argue with him. He was always right. He was always right. Larry London, London, by the way.
How did you find him? Is he a Portland guy or a friend?
Yeah, I've known him for years. He's from Salem. It's a city about
Hmm.
45 minutes south of here. And he and I've just run in different circles, and he also played drums on the Cry for Eden
Hmm.
album about 10 years ago. So if anybody, it's kind of obscure symphonic metal project.
Oh, well, that
But
sounds like what my listeners would probably like, because a lot of my friends that listen to this show, thank God you're the best friends ever. You actually will sit through this. No, I mean I'm a big prog nerd, so there's a lot
oh,
of
cool.
overlap there with symphonic metal and that sort of
Sweet.
thing. Definitely. So I want to go back to something that you touched on earlier, and forgive me because I think I did pretty good research, but I couldn't quite figure this out based on your email and what I found. You were talking about the Poisoner being in the running for something with the Recording Academy. Like, was it the actual Grammys? I'm a little confused
Mhm.
on that. Can you explain that bit and what that whole process has been
Yeah.
like?
Well, Grammy voting. Here's the first thing I'm going to say: people shit on the Grammys because of the TV show.
Right.
It's one show, and it's a very small number of categories that are on the primetime TV show. And a lot of it's cheesy and Vegasy, and there's dancers, and it's all dance music and stuff. Yeah, frankly, some of it's great, some of it's just, not
Mm-hmm.
into it. But online they have that you can watch all the awards for Americana, for the Latin Grammys, for even like indigenous kind of music, for heavy metal. Lizzie Hale was a presenter last
Oh,
year.
nice.
uh, and the Recording Academy is just a really great resource. They've got this program called Music Cares that has helped a lot of musicians during the pandemic and helped them with money, helped them with healthcare. They do educational stuff. But anyway, before you get to those final five in the Grammys, there are categories that have 100, sometimes 300 entrants. And if you are a professional in the industry, you can become a member of the Recording Academy, and you can vote in the previous.
Ah.
A lot of people, they don't talk about it. It's like a big secret that you're in the academy. I don't care. I'll talk about it. I don't care. Send me your for your consideration. I don't care. That's fine. So we talk to each other. We share our stuff and say, hey, this is for your consideration. Check it out. If you like it, look into my category, take a listen. And if you think you should vote for it, vote for it.
Hmm.
So, I've talked to some of my blues friends and say, hey, if you like metal too, take a listen. It's in the best metal performance category. So, it's a long shot, but there's been occasions where some underground bands have popped up in a lot of these categories.
Right.
Fantastic Negrito popped up, and there's in the blues category, and won the whole thing. So and Ghost, this,
Right. Or Tool. I mean,
you would think,
didn't Tool win
or
last
yeah,
year? I mean, they're not really
I
like
believe so.
underground, but I mean, in terms of what's
No,
played on the radio that isn't
yeah,
rock, yeah, they're kind of weird
yeah,
and different. But
Deaf Heaven, yeah. So
hmm,
you never know. You just never know. The thing is it's all about. I am trying to encourage metal musicians to get involved with the Recording Academy. And they, like I said, they shit all over it, and but Slayer's been there. This is not like back when Jethro Tull won.
yeah,
That's when people were like, "What the hell?" You know. But it's just a really good organization. There's so much to it. That show that you see once a year is just the tip of the iceberg. It's a glitzy, cheesy tip of a very cool iceberg.
interesting. Yeah, I never knew any of that, and I guess that kind of speaks to something that's maybe always persisted in the metal world, which, as much as I love metalheads and I love the subculture and it feels like a big family to me, it has always had the reputation of being kind of unnecessarily dismissive of other genres of music, perhaps a little elitist. And I wanted to get your thought on that because I think what you just said, how metalheads are like, nah, I'm not going to join the Recording Academy, that kind of proves my point. But you have probably a lot more experience with that than I do.
Well, I mean, like I'll just say, as a blues musician, I have gone. I went to a gig once, and I have this Slayer bag. it was this really cool bag, man. It's got this cool flap and this big pocket in front, the Slayer logo right in front, And so I'm at a blues gig. I got my shoes and stuff in a Slayer bag. And I'm walking around the festival. And people are like, hey, Liz, man. They go, where'd you get that bag? I'm like, at a Slayer concert. Come on. But people kept coming up to me and saying, yeah, I love metal too. I love metal too. So everywhere I go, there's blues people. There's a guy named J.P. Soares down in Florida, a well-known blues guitar player. He's an old school metalhead too. There's a lot of these guys. There's a blues guy, Mike Zito, who actually cut a record with Alex Skolnick. And so it's the musicians, they don't care if they like music. Even Adam Darsky, Behemoth, Behemoth, I don't know how to say it. But even Nurgle, he made like a kind of a roots and blues album.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like if it's good, if it's why not?
Exactly. Yeah. I just think a lot of the times it's the fans themselves giving the genre kind of a bad rap. Now, that leads me to an interesting question. And I guess a lot of our conversation pre-podcast was about, women in metal and how it's still maybe a little bit uncommon, even though it's certainly more acceptable now. But do you think that women in the metal world right now are kind of facing similar or different challenges maybe than in the past?
Well, I mean, in the past, there wasn't this idea that female-fronted metal is a genre.
Very true.
So that's a step forward in a lot of ways, but it also kind of boxes you in a bit. And I've noticed this happens in the blues scene as well as in the rock scene and metal scene, is that there's a lot of playlists, like, podcasts, radio playlists, that are guys, men, guys with strats, white guys with strats, everywhere you go. And then they will have a show once a month that's all women. We're going to feature all female fronted metal this week. And it's like, dude, just mix people in, mix women in, because they don't sound the same,
right. Yeah.
So
I struggle with it because it's like you want to highlight it, but then it's like, well, are you highlighting it because of gender or are you highlighting it because of talent? Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to do a little bit of both, I guess. But I like that thought, try to mix it in, fold it in. I mean, that's, to me, I guess, how people kind of get it normalized, is when you don't care that when you turn on your radio, Rollo Tomasi or Brutus or, some of these other quote unquote female fronted bands are playing and they're just as heavy as everyone else.
That's right. So that's what I'm hoping is a trend toward the future, is where, because you can imagine, like in the blues scene, if it was all white artists all the time, and then once a month they said, well, we're going to play the black artist show, we're going to have all black artists,
it would be freaking canceled is what would happen. Yeah, it
would be canceled. That's right. But that's what happens to women. That's what happens to women, which it's great. I mean, I will be on a female, all female showcase, concert, whatever. Oh yeah, I'll do that. It's a step forward, but I'm hoping we can get to the point where people don't even think about it anymore. They just go, this fucking rocks. I'm going to play it on my show, or I'm going to hire that band.
I think there was that article that came out at the end of last year, maybe. I can't remember her last name, but Larissa, the vocalist from Venom Prison, who, I mean, great band, crazy heavy extreme band, but wonderful band. I mean, she kind of, turned some heads with that too. She was like, I just don't understand. Like, female fronted is not a genre.
Yep.
It's
not a genre.
It's a descriptor, sure, but it is not a genre of music. And as a person who is always trying to uplift women in the metal scene in particular, but just being musicians in general, because, I'm sure you've heard it too, you're really good for a girl, like that kind of shit. You want to try to combat that, but then it's also not maybe fair to kind of put it on a pedestal either. It's tricky. It's very tricky, I think.
It is tricky, but it's not the way it used to be. And as far as myself personally, I think I've proved myself enough and paid enough dues, and I'm old enough, you know, that I'm fairly well treated with respect for the most part. And I do see a lot of younger female artists in the blues scene expressing dismay at their treatment from some people in the business, but also fans.
Right.
You know,
well, I mean, just
they
this,
haven't learned how to navigate that.
yeah, I think what it was just this week, who was it, like the manager from Enslaved and those types of bands was being a total creepo asshole. Like, sure, like, yes, let's please call that out. That is disgusting behavior. But I think there's also a lot more to there's probably many sides to behavior, and like women can be assholes too. Like that's where I kind of feel like a lot of the times, it's like, okay, I just want a free pass because traditionally it's been a male dominated scene. It's like, it doesn't give you a free pass to be a jerk. Like, you have to get along with everybody else, but it's kind of unfortunate, but at least we've come really far.
Yes. I think so, but it also, ladies, it doesn't give you a free pass to suck. Okay?
You heard it here.
You know what I mean? You heard it here. I mean, God bless all that, G triple R L girl rock 3-chord shit in the 90s, God bless. But you know what? There are people out there like Tal Wilkenfeld.
Oh, yeah. Amazing bassist.
Who can, like Tara Lynch, who can play their instruments, and they are not fucking around. And, being pretty and being okay and being a good entertainer is not enough. Just, knuckle down. Get into that instrument. There's YouTube videos. There's all kinds of stuff to just, make yourself the best musician that you can be. Because I don't think we don't have an excuse anymore, to just look good on stage. That's all I'm saying.
I hope this comes across as a compliment, but that sounds like a very Dolly Parton attitude to have, which to me is very respectable.
Well, thank you very much, because she's a badass, and she delivers.
Yeah, extremely.
She delivers.
I got hooked on a podcast about Dolly Parton about 3 months ago, and I just was like, why the hell was I not listening to Dolly Parton? She's an amazing person, musician. I'm like, what have I been doing with my life not listening to Dolly Parton? So
admirable.
Yeah, she's amazing. Do you have a preference on the instruments you play? That might seem like a stupid question, but...
No, bass. I am a bass player. I am not a good guitar player. I have tried to improve. I do work hard at it. I actually learned the first solo to Beyond the Realms of Death by Judas Priest. I actually have a picture behind my computer here, and it's a picture of Glenn Tipton, rocking an SG, and it says WWGTD. What would Glenn Tipton do? And so he's been my guiding star when it comes to how to play the guitar. Is fucking Glenn Tipton.
Is that the metalhead equivalent of like the motivational poster of the kitten, like, just hang in there, like, but with Glenn Tipton? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, what would Jesus do? But it's what would Glenn Tipton do? So I put that poster up on my wall just to remind me, be melodic, make sense, that, it's just guitar strings are tiny. Mm-hmm. How do these big guys with these big fat sausage fingers play these tiny ass strings? I don't get it, man. I don't get it. But that's what Pro Tools is for.
Yeah, right. God, I've been trying to teach myself bass for a couple months, and even the big fat strings on a 4-string, I'm like, I like hitting things. It's a lot easier. So I commend you. I mean, especially with blues too. Like, blues is, notoriously a pretty emotional yet can stretch into the technical genre. I mean, it's not an easy
Yeah.
genre to play unless you're pretty skilled, I would say.
Yeah, I think for really just whatever genre you're interested in, just listen to a lot of it and really listen to it. Kind of pick it apart in your brain. And that's how I learned how to play the drums enough to telegraph the ideas to Larry and to Vinny is just listening and listening and listening. Oh, okay, he's hitting the floor toms right there. Oh, okay, he's switching up from the hi-hat to the ride right there. Oh, he's opening the hi-hat a little bit and letting it be kind of sloppy. Just paying attention to that kind of shit. And when it comes to like learning how to play a certain style of music, just listen to a lot of that style of music. Don't without playing along. Just listen, let it get in your bones. That's
Right.
what I did with blues. I fell in love with blues, man. And that is some of that shit is hard.
Yep.
I mean, like, what I mean is like, it's heavy. I got a Eldorado Cadillac with a spare tire on the back. It fucking rocks, man. This old blues stuff. Jimmy
Makes you feel
Reed,
something.
Muddy Waters. That's right.
Well,
So I fell in love.
yeah, that's a good time to ask then. Kind of what's the best advice you can give? I mean, you just gave a good little nugget there. Actively listen to the music you want to play similarly to. But what's some other good advice?
You mean for like musicians?
Just generally, really.
Yeah.
For success
Oh,
in
gosh.
the music world or
Advice-
in life.
Lisa Mann's advice for success. I don't know. Just pay attention. Don't get so hung up in your own inner world that you don't pay attention to what's going on. And also, my problem in the past has always been, well, I know how to do this and I'm right and I know this. And it's like, you have to be able to say, no, I don't know how to do this. I'm wrong. Hey, maybe these other people can help me, because there are lots of people out there that will give advice and that know how to do shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you and I connected because I'm trying to find Spotify playlists that will add White Crone music. And so I tracked you down. I was like, man, this chick is badass. I gotta talk to you. And you're like, hey, by the way, I got a podcast. So just suck it in, learn. Just be open and pay attention.
That is honestly great advice. It's so simple, but it's such important advice, I think, right now, because, well, one, we're all kind of separated from each other, and I think a lot of us are doing more, self-teaching, a lot more using this time, if we're maybe quarantined or working from home, to maybe polish up some of our skill sets or add value to our resume or something, whether that's hobbies or jobs. So I think that's particularly pertinent right now. Given that you have The Poisoner out and it's out there for you to promote and stuff, is there any particular message you were kind of hoping people would get from it, or anything in particular that you're trying to say with your own music?
Well, like I just did a blues gig at the Alberta Rose Theater in Portland. And they're doing a live stream thing only, no audience. So they're just video cameras. And the sound man, my husband told him I had this metal CD. And the sound man was like, oh, yeah, I grew up on metal and, I love Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. And I was like, dude, this record is this is for you. This is for you. Because I wrote this album because I wanted to write an album that I would have bought when I was 16 years old. And so if there's people out there that are like me, maybe they're in the same age bracket, or maybe their uncle played old Maiden and Merciful Fate records for them and stuff. It's like, that's why I decided to market the CD, to put it out, because at first it was just, I want to make a CD that for me. It was just for me. And then after I started putting it together, I was like, yo, I think other people are going to want to hear this. And I've had a lot of great feedback. I've got a lot of great feedback from Germans. Germany, this album's it's doing really well. I've been featured in a couple of magazines. I'm probably sending more CDs to Germany than I am around the United States.
Are you going to be able to play like when things reopen, do you think?
I don't know. I haven't had plans to put together a band for White Crone because I'm working with Splintered Throne. I'm working with Splintered Throne, and we would hope to be able to, to cross the pond and go to the UK and Germany. But mainly I want to reach those people who are like me, that feel this deep love for the classics, for singing, for singers too, like Dio. Ronnie James Dio is a big influence, Bruce Dickinson, and dual guitars and galloping bass lines. And, it's a love letter.
It's a love letter. I enjoy
it
that.
Really is a love letter.
Well, Lisa, I'm gonna try out a couple things before I start to wind this interview down. I hope you don't mind me being your guinea pig, because I've kind of changed up some of my ending questions over the episodes. I still always keep my main MO at the very end, which I'll save for last, but I think I'm gonna go out in threes. So I have three questions and they're each in threes. So in any realm of life, who would be three of your biggest influences? And then number two would be, who are three artists that are really on your radar right now? And why do you enjoy them?
Wow. Okay. I would say Bruce Dickinson, huge influence as a vocalist, but also very inspiring. I know he and I don't see eye to eye politically. I don't care. But just as a human being, he's a Renaissance man. Fencing, flying planes. I mean, he flies the plane and then sings all night. Ronnie James Dio, a big influence too. I don't know. Maybe I should think about a blues artist, perhaps.
It doesn't even necessarily need to be an artist. Could be like a personal, family member. Or
a big influence in my life. Well, I would say it would be my mom. Absolutely my mom. She was a stage mom. She was always encouraging me, and she let my crazy ass friends come over, and she would listen to me singing along with Merciful Fate and King Diamond. And if you could imagine the caterwauling and the screaming that came out of my room when I was a kid singing fucking King Diamond records. So my mom, yeah. Definitely my mom.
Here's to all metalhead daughters' moms, because I know my mom will listen to this, and she knows I love her, and she knows I love her for all the same reasons. So way to go, moms.
Yeah. Way to go, metal mom.
Okay, so those are three great answers. And then question two would be, three artists, or maybe even albums. Three artists or albums you're enjoying right now, and why?
Right now, there is a guy from Austin, Texas, and he has an album. He goes by the name Drainbow, and he's got an album on Bandcamp right now called The Tower of Flints, and it is absolutely insane. It is nuts. Drainbow, Tower of Flints. Fucking love it. Can't get enough of it. It's very avant-garde.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
It's heavy. I love it for the same reasons that I love Avatar and Car Bomb.
Oh, you like Car Bomb too? Awesome.
I fucking love Car Bomb.
I swear I've talked about Car Bomb on like so many podcasts I've been on. I should know their stuff better, but they're a very slept on band, and they're so wacky and out there.
Oh yeah. And then let me see, there's got to be two other. Okay, I'm trying to think. There's a band from Portland called Time Rift.
Okay.
And they're a wave of rock and roll band, and they've got this new album, or just about a year old, called Eternal Rock, and it fucking rocks eternal. I love it. And then there's a guy who's got several different projects, and he's got this synth project called he goes by the name Alpha Bootis, Bootis, and he's got this album called Space Vikings and Other Stories.
Sounds pretty
Space
metal.
Vikings. And yeah, it's like synth metal. And I think it just takes me back to the days when I'd get baked and go to the planetarium and go to the laser light show. And it makes me so fucking happy. I listen to it every fucking day.
I wish I was your friend, like back then. Oh man. All right. Well, I hope I didn't. Okay, I hope I'm not going to ruin your opinion of me by asking you my last question, but let me save that real quick. I just want to make sure if there's nothing else you wanted to mention about The Poisoner or any of your other projects before we kind of put the little bow tie on this interview.
Well, I just want to mention again, keep your eyes peeled. It's been a time-consuming process because of COVID and because of the nature of the day jobs that some of these guys in the band have. But like I said, I joined this band, Splintered Throne. Splintered Throne has several full-length releases out. Their singer is fabulous. I was a fan. I was going to their shows, and I was at a show when he announced that he was leaving. The singer announced he was leaving. So my friend that was with the show, she's like nudging me in the ribs. She's going, go talk to him. Go talk to them. Because she knows how much I love the band. So, yeah, they hired me to be their singer. And so we're writing a CD. And like I said, it's been slow going, but these songs kick ass. So keep your eyes peeled for next year releasing a new Splintered Throne record.
Okie doke. I can also drop some links to their stuff as well when I wrap this all up. So then, all right, well, Lisa, I'm going to hit you with my last question then. Don't hate me, but if you had to only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
Oh, that's the kicker. God. That's rough.
I build up my guest trust for a full hour, and then I go,
Yeah. But I know Fatal Portrait by King Diamond. Fatal Portrait. I just love that album. Iron Maiden, Power Slave, most likely. Probably Power Slave. And then it's tough because I want a Jimmy Reed album in there too, man. Okay, but it's like how about Holy Diver?
Oh, Dio. Okay.
See, Dio, right? But the thing is, I call myself the unfrozen cave woman of metal because I was in the blues for such a long time. All my references are fucking old.
It doesn't matter.
I do like me some Car Bomb, and I love me some Avatar. Feathers and Flesh. How could I live without Feathers and Flesh? I don't know.
I know,
man.
this is a really torturous question, but I've been doing it every episode since the first one, and I'm like, I can't change it now. Like, that's just my torturous thing.
Yeah.
Oh, are you aware that Pat Boone covered Holy Diver on his like shitty metal covers album? I only learned that recently, and I'm like, what? I mean, I should have asked about that earlier.
It's painful. Yes, I am aware of this.
You wish you weren't.
Yeah, I actually just bought an album, and I don't know. Let me see if I can find it. There's a band that did an all acoustic album of metal classics, and it's pretty funny. I don't know. I can't find it. I'm looking for it, but I can't.
We'll send it to me later, I guess. But
I'll send it to you later. It's
interesting.
Great.
Well, really, thank you for letting me pick your brain and having you be kind of my, break from my hiatus. It definitely gives me a lot of hope that there are obviously still interesting musicians to talk to out there, even in quarantine times. So I do really appreciate your time and your insight.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you having me on your podcast. This is a real treat. It's very nice to meet you.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap on my interview with Lisa Mann of White Crone. Make sure you check out her album, The Poisoner, where she basically does everything and totally crushes it. You can find more White Crone stuff online at whitecrone.bandcamp.com. She's also on YouTube under White Crone, www.whitecrone.com. And then also, don't forget, I did go back and listen to some of the stuff that Splintered Throne has out there, and it's fantastic, so I'm really excited to hear how they sound with Lisa at the helm. As always, thanks for listening.